Hey everyone, today's tutorial is on pre and post-workout nutrition. Now if you can maintain a whole food, mostly plant-based nutrition practice and not eat too much, you should be okay. But it always depends on where you buy your food, how you make your food, who you go to make your food in case you don't make your own, in addition to time of year, where you are in your training cycle, and where you are in your age. So I think that there are certain demands placed on the body dependent on age. So if you're younger than 18, I might say maybe don't do these two things. Sometimes the pre-workout's a little bit too stimulating to an 18-year-old or younger. The post-workout should be okay, but these are what I do. So you always have to have this stuff personally designed. So I'm going to be 55 this year. I think that I'm better than I have been in the last 15 years. But it's taken me a lot of pain and suffering to get to this point. It's okay, it's worth the investment as we get older. As I'll always tell you, I think you should always be ready for the next decade, the current decade of challenge and the next decade of challenge, because it's going to be different. Every decade in a human life is different, and sometimes when you're kind of settled down with tolerating your usual things, it won't be enough to take care of the next challenge. So, the stuff that I usually do would be to get ready for the workout. And somebody asked me about what I would do as far as pre and post, but I would even go past that. I'd say if I want a good workout, I want to get psyched up the night before and get a good night's sleep. Calming practice, melatonin at night, sometimes 5-HTP. I take all that stuff, in addition to valerian with hops, to make sure I guarantee a really good night's sleep, so that I can take advantage of these things the next day. Sometimes if you don't get a good night's sleep and then you take caffeine, which is not healthy for me because I have a heart condition, I do matcha, I don't know if you can see this, matcha ceremonial grade tea from David's Tea. No caffeine in this, but it is stimulating enough. Stimulating enough to get you almost like you just took a caffeine hit, but yet not the palpitation, diarrhea, upset stomach from caffeine. There's also creatine, and I've talked about before. Creatine, and this just happens to be Now Food. Now Food is one of the major brands in Fruitful Yield, and the studies on creatine, I like following Jay Hoffman out of University of Central Florida, where I used to be a team physician, and he did great information release on, or studies on creatine use. You usually have to do a loading dose and then a maintenance dose. I always save this for my max. So I usually cycle my exercise routine so I hit a peak at about 3 months. This time it's going to be hitting a mountain in Colorado. That's going to be my peak. But usually if you lift weights, it'll be when you hit your 1 rep max. And that should be cycled down and you should get off that. It's not going to be using this creatine every time you work out. So cycle up, get ready for it, maximize on your efforts at your exercise, hit, and then go back down, work yourself off, and build up again over the next 3 months, or more or less. Depends on your training, depends on which sport you're in too. So sometimes I don't have the B12 powder that I rely on, but B12 at about 1,000 micrograms per day is pretty decent. I get a B12 shot sometimes. Don't like shots because it affects my deltoid workout. Sometimes if I push the envelope with pushing overhead and I have a shot, it upsets the work out and it hurts a little bit for a couple of days. But boy, B12 shots give this boost of energy, more so than I get with B12 pills. I have used powder in the past. I like the Now Foods powder. I just haven't picked up this stuff. Then there's rhodiola. Rhodiola is an adaptogen. For those of you who have problems with adrenal fatigue, stress, sleep disorder, I think rhodiola will give you a little bit of the settling that the adrenal gland needs back here when it needs support. In addition, rhodiola is a little more stimulating than ginseng or ashwagandha. All three of those things are adaptogens. Check out my video, DrRic tutorial cortisol, or DrRic tutorial reset your clock, and it'll give you ideas about how to use the adaptogens to build up your adrenals. There's also, for my fibromyalgia sufferers, and I luckily have had a remission of my fibromyalgia, I like Jacob Teitelbaum's D-ribose. That's where I got the idea. It's kind of a building block for your mitochondria. but I just happened to pick this up again because it was in the fruitful yield that I usually go to. D-ribose is a sugar, but it's a sugar that usually is utilized by the mitochondria, those little powerhouses of every cell in your body, and it gives you a little bit of a burst, again, without being overstimulating. D-ribose, excellent. And there's also, if you believe it or not, sometimes taking in extra doses of, this is kind of a hormone substitute. Haven't evaluated this on consumer labs, but I like the tribulus in this. Tribulus terrestris sometimes gives the testosterone or the testicles and the adrenals a little bit more building block to do what they have to do best. Make testosterone, make androgen. This has not been studied by consumer labs. Whether it's placebo effect with me, I am not sure, but sometimes when my cycle is when I'm tired in my cycle, I might do that. It's not a common go-to that I have, but I put it in my usual pre-workout. So the only thing I don't have here is the magnesium. I love magnesium. I think magnesium helps me again with atrial fibrillation, which I have suffered from in the past. Palpitations, muscle cramps, especially when I'm taking hikes and it's like 90 degrees outside in the desert. I think magnesium is excellent to have. I've taken it on a couple of DrRic excursions. I remember spraying down everybody with topical magnesium up in Glacier Park last time I took a group up there, and whether it works or not, again, placebo, if a placebo works, then it's guaranteed that it's doing something. Now, whether it is reproducible on studies, sometimes depending on the risk of use, it might not even be worth going into the studies. Like B12. There's no toxicity with B12. You question whether it would work or not. Again, taking oral B12, I don't need a $5 million study to say that it would help or not help, or maybe it's placebo. Now, if I'm doing a shot, I want to have reproducible evidence. So, anyway, good night's sleep, all these things, maybe caffeine. If you like caffeine, that's fine. So that's better than sugary drinks. Don't do the energy drinks. The Red Bulls, the Amped, the Monster drinks, too much bromine. And it has too much of that sugar substitute, so might get you a little energetic for a short time, but you'll crash afterward because of the insulin dump later. I'd rather have you take the matcha green tea. Sometimes Poudre is a nice black tea that will give you stimulation, but it's almost like caffeine. Might as well just take caffeine with an extra shot of espresso. No sugar, no milk. And again, avoid those sugary drinks that come in the cans. So the other thing I do with my pre-workout routine, I listen to Metallica. I like Metallica, sometimes Nickelback, Godsmack. I love turning those things on. Now, because I'm turning 55, I listen to Sammy Hagar, I Can't Drive 55. All these things remind me and take me back to when I was working out in the gym in school or working out with martial arts. It brings me back to that energetic level. It just gets me pumped up. So it always is good to envision where you're going to before you work out, and envision when you're done calming, because that'll also help inflammation, which brings me to post-workout. So usually post-workout, I like to get protein in ASAP. This is brown rice protein, which I've utilized. I think I put pictures on either Facebook or one of the social media websites. So you try to get as much protein in as possible after your workout. If I can't get the protein in powder form in brown rice, hemp's got a great amino acid profile, almost equal to red meat. So if you're going to do any of the plant-based proteins, hemp, brown rice, soy, pea protein, I'd probably choose hemp, but it depends on what's available, how much you want to spend. This is also protein. This comes in, it's almost like a gel that we use post-workout or post-run. It's really thick though, but it gives 10 grams per 2 tablespoons. And it does have 6 grams of carbohydrate, 1 gram of fat, so you will be taking something else in and you will be turning on the insulin response. But I think if you're trying to get a decent amount of protein in suddenly, within a half an hour to an hour of workout, that's where I would go. Well, you always want to do whole food, mostly plant-based protein, but that's a great supplement to diet. Also, again, you can use a magnesium afterward or turmeric. This, I used to love Gaia brand turmeric supreme, but it was knocked down as non-approved by consumer labs. This I got online, Amazon. but positive and given a thumbs up by Consumer Lab. Turmeric's really important to have in your diet as an anti-inflammatory, in addition to practicing an anti-inflammatory diet. I would usually say if you have Hashimoto's, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, rheumatoid arthritis, you might want to stay away from grains for a while. There's the paleo autoimmune diet. Terry Walls cured herself with regards to her multiple sclerosis with practicing that kind of diet. I don't have the book here, but you can check that out online. Usually grain is irritating, and again, an anti-inflammatory diet for the time that you're maxing out on your endeavor would be probably important. You can certainly do that. I don't take dairy anymore, but I think the casein in dairy is irritating. I think gluten is irritating. I think depending on the person, you might have some irritation to certain foods, and that's why it's either you try an elimination diet or you have me or your doctor test for food allergies. I think all those things will be important in getting to your peak max. Again, if you divide your year into 12 months and you build up, rest, build up, rest, build up, rest. I mean, it's the concept that we use in weightlifting and bodybuilding of 1 rep max. You always want to stimulate the muscle so it has something to look forward to and work for. If you're kind of going to the gym doing the usual and you know that you'll usually fatigue after about 10 repetitions of 3 sets, depending on the body part, I wouldn't just keep on with that. I'd mix it up. Either you do a pyramid exercise, or you do plyometrics, or you do high-intensity interval training, or you switch over to cardio. You do something different just to mix it up, because muscle needs stimulation, and plus the brain gets tired and bored. I think I've mentioned this before, when you're trying to push the envelope with post-exercise workout regimes, you want to stimulate it so it moves. Stimulate so you stress out the muscle system, not to the point of injury, just to the point of challenge, and then it repairs. Stress out, challenge, repair, stress out, challenge, repair, versus like fibromyalgia. If you go unbridled into your own exercise routine, or you go gung-ho into a walking routine, cardio routine, and you haven't been coached and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to push and then crash and injure. And that's not going to be a great injury. You can be injured as far as muscle. You can also develop injury as far as depression or other problems flaring up, heart disease or your atrial fibrillation or your irritable bowel syndrome, whatever it is. Pushing and crashing is not healthy. Push repair is good. So that's why it's very important to do this. And again, this is where my young guys come in. When I have worked out with young guys before, half my age, the tendency is you worked out so aggressively that you feel deserving of a bad food diet. You just don't do anything bad like have McDonald's because you're hungry and you're famished and you worked out enough. That's going to take inflammation and take it up. And it's going to take you a little longer to repair. So you just did that aggressive exercise and you did the pre-workout load and you blew it with a diet. So you got to prepare for a good workout the day before. You got to prepare for healing time till the day after to 2 days after. So this is all linked together. Mindful practice is also always good to calm down the brain after your workout. So those of you who have to work out late at night, I wouldn't do that because it's just too adrenaline stimulating from this stuff to get calm. And you need a good night's sleep to start the anti-inflammatory process. So you can see how it's not just that window of a half hour, which is all I use. Half hour about 3 times a day. Half hour 3 times a week of exercise. It's not just that little window. It's the window that generates what you do the week before, the week after, the months before your routine or max, the months after. So it's all linked together, but that's what is termed the anti-inflammatory lifestyle. And that's why I push everybody to do their best and come back and see me. Even athletes have to see me because I have to take a step back as their coach and see if we're headed in the right direction, where we came from, and then make changes if we have any deficiencies along the way, just to push the envelope and feel great.